Hello everyone, welcome back to my Let's Talk series, which is honestly probably about as infrequent as seasons of Rick and Morty. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was to do with microtransactions once again, as we're all, as we all know and love to hate on the subject. Basically, I'd recently found out over the past couple of days, and I've been reading and watching some news on YouTube from various different places and reading a few articles and stuff, that microtransactions are coming to Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, and generally the kind of ethos that Activision are taking with that kind of stuff. I also wanted to talk about the casino in GTA 5 and a little bit about how that's been perceived recently, and also just to talk a little bit about review shielding and why I think the anti-gambling laws that are in the UK, or the gambling laws that are in the UK, deemed loot boxes to not be gambling, because I think I've found out a reason why that for the legal system in the UK it would complicate things to a degree. So anyway, to go on to my first point, well, Activision adding in microtransactions to Crash Team Racing. It's not unexpected from my point of view because of, well, generally it was always a little bit grindy, and well, it had the kind of feeling that, let's just go ahead and use this as an example. If you were to buy, say, I don't know, Gran Turismo or Forza Motorsport, and in the next iteration of the game, whatever that may be, it cut down credit payouts for all events and races and everything else by 90%. So you got 10% of what you used to. That would pretty much cripple the in-game economy, because, it's like once in every 10, once in every 20 races, depending on what cars you want, you'd pretty much be able to save up enough to buy them, depending on obviously how well you did, and, what events you were playing, of course. But if all that was reduced by 90%, you would get a quite sizable grind for supercars, up to what would become an unbearable slog to get through everything as quick as possible. And without a microtransaction system in there, the reviews would pretty much say, okay, so it's a little bit different from previous iterations of the game. It has drastically reduced credit payouts, and for whatever reason, we don't know why. And then if the developer, whether it be Microsoft or, SCE or, Sony Entertainment, it'd be a bit of a problem. Because, you would have to grind for an inordinate amount of time. Take Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, when it first released, at the gold payouts that you were getting for the premium currency, which, again, I'll come back to later on. It was so slow to gain it that you pretty much had to grind for hundreds of hours for just one horse, and that was something that really annoyed people. It had become the same for cars. And then to throw a microtransaction system in there on top of it to buy said currency to allow you to then buy the cars you wanted wouldn't necessarily go down all too well. Now, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled isn't quite taking it to the same extent, as it's mainly just proposed to be for cosmetics, new races and stuff like that, skins, the standard stuff that the same as Fortnite and Apex Legends do, that people seem to be happy to deal with. But then, Fortnite's Battle Royale mode and Apex Legends are both free-to-play games, whereas Crash Team Racing was bought up front, and that's where a big difference lies. Because paying for a game up front and then having a microtransaction system shoehorned in after its initial reviews have come in, everything's all good, people are quite singing the game's praises. It's a good rendition of an old classic from a bygone era. It's got no microtransactions. It's a little bit grindy, yeah, sure, but the gameplay mechanics are all there. It is essentially the game we know and love. And then after all of the, the initial big up in terms of good reviews, the inevitable sort of hype zone of a new release, when it gets good reviews, it inevitably enters that state where it gets more sales, it generally tends to perform better financially, and it tends to just get more of a player base and fan base behind it. But I can't help but notice that with the way the grind was set up, much like my example before, it seems like the framework was in place for a microtransaction system for Crash Team Racing off the bat. And the fact that they've shoehorned in this kind of thing before, and by that I mean Activision, they've shoehorned in a microtransaction system into Call of Duty before, and most people, admittedly, it seems they have learned somewhat of a lesson from Call of Duty, maybe, because what people described the Call of Duty microtransaction lootbox system as after it was added in post-launch was pretty much just a bait to get all the good reviews out and saying, oh yeah, like despite all the fears and everything that was going on, it doesn't have microtransactions, and then to add them later caused a kind of backlash. Yeah, it did, but then they kind of took it a bit too far, like adding in, the weapon charms that you could get that originally were designed to just, oh, you got a weapon charm, you can now put that on any of your guns, now you've got to put it on each individual one, so you've got to unlock the same thing basically 50 times to get it on all the weapons, that kind of thing. It does kind of sting people a little bit, and it did kind of take it that little bit too far. Now, considering that Activision have had quite a history with microtransactions, and not to mention the overall stigma that is on microtransactions, just the word, I mean, hell, I'm going to go for it and reference the same thing that pretty much everyone has, which is a statement that'll probably haunt the person who said it as well as the gaming industry for years. They're not loot boxes, they're surprise mechanics. The fact that they're shying away from loot boxes and companies shy away from microtransactions because of the natural stigma that comes with them is just corporate greed, but then it comes from distinct examples of being shadowy, being underhanded, being just outright not upfront and trying to hide details and just cover things up. Like adding in this whole, what I've deemed to be review shielding for the likes of Call of Duty and Crash Team Racing, where it seems apparent that there's a foundation works in place for a microtransaction system, but there isn't one when it first launches, and then after it's had its big boom where all of its new sales and all of the good reviews come in, then it turns bad. It almost seems somewhat premeditated. Now, I'm not saying it definitely is. Activision's a big company, and frankly, if Activision, if they didn't, fair enough, I'm not one to judge. If they did, well, it's a little bit nasty to not just be upfront about it. I wouldn't necessarily say criminal, but it is kind of perpetrating that bad stereotype and that bad business practice stigma. It is basically preaching into that stereotype. And honestly, it's just adding fuel to the fire for future generations and future releases to just mistrust the whole microtransactions label. But, well, if the framework's already there, it can't help but seem a little bit premeditated. However, with Activision being such a large company, it could also be the board of directors just turned around and said, okay, yeah, so it's done well, it's got its player base, right. Yeah, we've decided now that we want microtransactions in this game, so you're going to put it in. And, in the course of 2-3 months or whatever it's been since the game's release, I honestly don't know as I haven't bought it myself. It's been a thing that's just been put into development and then basically pushed out. But then it doesn't seem to have changed the native build of rewards. I mean, it might do, we just don't know. The details haven't been overly forthcoming up until the recent announcement, in amongst a bunch of other things, including a new Grand Prix and stuff like that they'd announced. But then, this leads on to another point with the likes of microtransactions. You see, when these reviewers get their hands on the products, what I've noticed is people are having a go at them. Obviously, people put on, their review sites, their news sites, their review videos, that their review says all of these good things, all this, that and the other, and some of them even say, oh, it's a review in progress, so it'll change as the game updates and changes over time, and they're kind of having a go at people, or review, networks, who are putting these reviews up. And I'm not going to gloss over this. It's not just the review websites and stuff like that you see that have this issue. They are professionals, they do it for a living, they need to make money out of what they do, so they can't really go back and have the time to, you know, change up and edit or, you know, change entirely pretty much the article. They don't have time to go back and edit or, you know, write a new article on the same game that is just changed up. Some places will do, but they tend to be smaller articles covering these changes. Like, there's plenty of places that cover patch notes. But it's not just the reviewers that seem to be getting this kind of thing that's, you know, happening to them. People that post reviews, streamers that actually play the game, their footage that was recorded at that time and most likely will be archived, either whether it's on, you know, on their streaming platform, be that Twitch, Mixer, whatever it might be, depending on their platform, or alternatively immortalized in a YouTube channel archive where, you know, things tend to just linger for years and years and years. It doesn't really matter. Their viewpoint and their gameplay is as outdated as reviews, but people seem to just be tearing into these review sites, tearing into the reviewers, and just absolutely ripping them a new one about, oh, how come, despite the fact this has been announced, how come it's now no longer been covered? You say it's an article, a work in progress, but no, it doesn't cover this at all. It doesn't go into any detail about this, how it affects the game or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, like, almost they're getting it to the same extent that Ninja got it in the neck for being paid is, you know, the, what was it, $1 million to stream Apex Legends. And yeah, just to point out a simple fact of the matter here, not a fan of Ninja. Don't really like his style, don't really like his videos personally. They're just not my thing. Nothing against them, I don't know, I'm not a fan personally, I guess. It's just not my style. But, you know, I'm fully in support of him getting paid that money to, you know, stream the game. He literally has tens, if not hundreds of thousands of viewers, and EA wanted to advertise their new game Apex. They put in $1 million and paid him outright to show it off. It's no different than the likes of product placement in TV and movies, which, believe you me, you'll see a lot more than you realise, because a lot of it is done quite underhandedly. Although not maliciously underhandedly, it's just done at, well, scrap the underhandedly thing, it's just done subtly, like a way that's not shoved down your throat. Well, in some cases it can be, but not always. But taking it out on him, if anyone else was put in that same position, same as Ninja, or here's $1 million to stream for, I don't know, 5 hours, however long it was, don't know, don't care, you would take it. Pretty much anyone would. It's like, oh yeah, stream a video game for 5 hours, just make sure you've got like 10,000 people watching you. Job done. If you had that opportunity and you had the fan base to do it, you probably would. And it's business. You don't do everything by a moral code of what others judge you by. You can just, you know, you do what's best for you at the end of the day. And if you have that kind of fan base and you've worked hard to generate and build that kind of fan base, and you end up getting a, like, massive, you know, payday like this, well, I don't see anyone who would just turn it down and go, oh no, it's against my integrity, I wouldn't do it. It's $1 million. That's going to set you up for at least the next 10 years, if you're not stupid. And it's the same with these review sites. People are tearing them a new one, but aren't seemingly tearing Activision a new one. Yes, it's a little bit underhanded. It is quite shady that they're adding in these microtransactions after launch to, like I said, review shield their game, and to make it more appealing at first launch, to get that big, you know, big spike of sales that new releases get in the little hype bubble or hype zone that, you know, new products get. But it's the same with new TV series and everything else. They all get like a major bubble right at the beginning, but then that doesn't stop them from changing things later on down the line, and then a TV show becoming crap, for example. Now, I personally don't watch that much TV, honestly, so I can't really think of any series that really did decide to go terrible after a while, other than what people seem to declare has happened to The Simpsons. Now, I personally haven't watched that since I was like 13, I don't think, so, you know, it's not something that I particularly kind of kept up with, but I did grow up with The Simpsons and I did like it, and I still think that it has merit for its original creation back in the day. Now keep in mind how long The Simpsons has been going and how many people are going to have come and gone. And, you know, it's not just the gaming industry that's affected by this kind of stuff, though microtransactions in their own little, almost like mini industry, micro industry, however you want to call it, it's become this whole almost grey market area of gaming where it can be used in a good way. Like, I don't know, Overwatch, Apex, that kind of stuff where it supports the game's continued development. And, you know, especially with Overwatch, for example, which, again, has Activision's name to it. But I would say this is mostly thanks to Jeff Kaplan. This has remained the way it has, as well as the rest of his team. That the cosmetics you get in Overwatch are only cosmetics, so they don't upset the competitive balance of the gameplay, even though some skins may give better camouflage in certain areas than others. That's just inevitable. Because, let's face it, the same could be said of Fortnite. If you have green skin, like the ghoul skin for example, and hide in bushes, gives you a distinct advantage over someone who is bright red for example. But my point stands that the skins don't really make that much of a difference overall. If there's anything, it's very minor, especially considering that you're red outlined in Overwatch as well. And it doesn't impact the gameplay in any meaningful way in terms of making it unbalanced, making it, you know, one-sided, making one person ridiculously powerful. And it also then, in turn of just having it be present in the game, ensures that one of the big problems of the previous generation, being Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, is also not a problem, which was dividing the community through DLCs and map packs, because you had a lot of problems with Call of Duty, with, you know, Battlefield, even with Assassin's Creed. There's a big example where you had the game came out and it was great. Then the map packs came out and started dividing people between the haves and have-nots. So you had people who had the map packs could play the maps, and the people who didn't got knocked into other lobbies, sometimes just knocked out of matchmaking and had to re-queue completely because a DLC map they didn't have had come up. Or in the terms of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which is honestly probably the weirdest system in history now that I think about it, having to go in and activate each DLC map pack individually, so you could have one active at any given time. And I can't wrap my head around that. I don't know how it managed to work. It just doesn't seem to be a good system. Where you had to have a certain map pack active, you could only have one active at any given time from the DLCs, and it would allow you to play on that map. But unless everyone you played with also had that same one active at the same time, you basically could not play on that map. And it got to a point eventually where it became such a divisive item within the game's mechanics that honestly it basically killed the games online after a couple of years. I mean, yes, fair enough, the lifespan of a game and all that, but to outright kill stone dead your own multiplayer by just having that system in of map pack, like choosing which map pack to have active, just doesn't make sense. But then, for each individual company or game that has microtransactions implemented well, there is a game that has it implemented badly. Like, you know, people in their outrage with Fallout 76. Which, honestly, the game now, I haven't heard a good bit of news about it. We had all the pre-order bonuses like, the nylon bag and all this, that and the other, basically made out of a pair of tights. It was really terrible material. It wasn't what was promised. It wasn't, you know, it was supposed to be canvas originally, and it was basically just not great. And then you had the game being broken, then Bethesda releasing all this other merchandise, like the faux leather jackets and stuff. Well, I say faux leather, they may have been real for all I know, but looking at them, they didn't look overly expensive and looked quite, honestly, quite cheap in my opinion, and not something worth spending $280 on. But then, to focus on that kind of stuff over fixing the game And having microtransactions in that game has just made it such a PR shitstorm. Alongside Elder Scrolls Blades, Bethesda have got a lot of flack to deal with recently. And I don't know if that's just the case of they've just implemented it badly, or, it's a case of, I don't know, what's considered shadowy business practice, but Overwatch, Jeff Kaplan was pretty upfront about the loot boxes. They're in the game, they're a system, you can use them, you can buy them if you want to, you unlock them by leveling up, which, fair enough, you unlock them fairly consistently to the point I've been able to do a fair series of my own just on unboxing them for the fun of it, because frankly it's nice just to unwind and do that every once in a while. It can be a little bit cathartic. But then I've never had to buy any loot boxes. I've always had them all just to open and never really had to spend any money on them. But for the people that do want to spend the money on the event cosmetics that are quite highly priced, I don't know what the point of having heavily and highly in the same thing is, but you get the idea. They're quite highly priced, so they're quite hard to get, and if you don't get them in a random drop, which most of them are legendary, so it's quite difficult to get in a random drop, well, it becomes a bit of a desperate scramble to get them. Well, not necessarily a desperate scramble, but you get the idea of a case of, someone really wants a skin, they'll be willing to spend money on it. It's that kind of thing, which, yeah, maybe it is to an extent, but at the end of the day, for a trade-off for that kind of thing, we also get all of the characters and all of the maps consistently throughout the game's development for free, which is costing the company quite a lot of money to manufacture. So it's, all the man hours that go into the map design, all of the rebalancing, all of the patches, all the customer service. It pretty much all trickles down to millions of different things, most of which we probably don't even think about on a day-to-day basis. But, yeah, it's there to support the longevity and development of a game that otherwise probably would have the same lifespan as a game of the last generation, which isn't exactly ideal. Well, I say it isn't exactly ideal. If you had a game like Overwatch and you had to buy a new version of that every 2 years, it'd be a lot worse than having a microtransaction system in a game you've got to buy once every 6-7 years, you know what I mean? Considering it in terms of you can either spend £120, or, more like $150 these days, or, $180 by equivalent, on 3 games, or you can spend, £50, $60 on one game, and play that over the same length of time, but that game has microtransactions in it that don't really invade in the gameplay any. I can't say I've ever noticed anyone having a distinct advantage or anything over anyone else in Overwatch at any point from the loot box system. Then give me a game with a loot box system in it. And the fact that it was so transparently communicated that that was the reason it's there and that's why we want to have it in place, I can't think of many people who particularly kick it off a massive fuss that Overwatch is being massively predatory or, massively aggressive on these microtransactions. And they're not. It's implemented well. The same as in, Apex, even to an extent I'll agree Fortnite, even though they've kind of crossed the lines of copyright every now and again, which is something I don't necessarily agree with. It seems to be a bit contentious. I remember Alfonso Ribeiro not being happy they included the Carlton dance, and Donald Faison saying that Fortnite's default dance jacked up his dance from Scrubs. It's, there are a few things I've got as bones to pick with Fortnite, most of which is the fact that it's no longer the game that I originally bought into, which was the single-player campaign, which was honestly an interesting premise. And it just seems, it feels to me like, albeit Fortnite's campaign is still a thing that exists, and it is still something that is worked on quite consistently, and, it is still a game in its own right, it feels as if most of the resources of Epic have just gone into the Battle Royale side, and that's all they focus on, because that's where they can really monetize it. And yeah, fair enough, that side of it is free, so I guess we did only buy into the campaign, but I don't know, it doesn't feel as though what I paid for was entirely... Well, it feels like what I've paid for a lot of what I've paid for has been channeled into something I didn't pay for, if that makes sense, with the Battle Royale mode. Honestly, I was a fan of Fortnite's Battle Royale for about a good 4 seasons of the Battle Royale, but it's definitely, I would say, the least favourite of the Battle Royales that I have played and have seen. You know, you've got plenty of other Battle Royale games, be it, you know, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Apex, PUBG, even, you know, the games like The Culling, which have no fan base left, basically. The player base just dwindled too much. The Darwin Project, there's tons of them out there, you know. Fortnite just appeals the least to me because the building mechanics just don't feel good anymore. When they added in turbo building, it just didn't feel as rewarding. Yes, it takes effort and, you know, skill to master the turbo building mechanics, but I just don't find it as fun as other battle royales. It doesn't feel as tactical because you don't have to really rely on a lot of things. You can just kind of build what you need on the fly, and it's a lot more reactionary than tactical for me. But that's moving off topic into, you know, battle royales. But then they're all free to play. They rely on microtransactions to fund their longevity. For a game like, you know, FIFA or Call of Duty, hell, even Battlefield, with its, like, microtransactions and whatnot, it's a bit of a different ball game when you pay for a game outright and then you're expected to pay more for various things. And that's what peeves people. It can be a real challenge to get the balance right, and when it's implemented with such cloak and dagger, well, not cloak and dagger, but when it's implemented with, you know, the whole kind of, let's not, like, openly just say we're going to put microtransactions in the game, let's just let everyone wait and then we'll just add them in once everyone's bought into it. The kind of secrecy, and I wouldn't say it's deceptive, but it's omission of fact to an extent. Like, it would have been nice to be told up front before, you know, buying the game, there will be microtransactions in the future, which, like I said, may not be possible, but it would have been nice to know, rather than just have it shoehorned in with a bunch of other notes, like it's, you know, something they were trying to perhaps hide in amongst a pile of other information. But then, of course, with the games, like I mentioned, that do microtransactions well, despite all of the slating, Rockstar and Take-Two, Monolith and Shadow of War, they're two primary examples because, you know, Rockstar and Take-Two studios clash, Monolith and Warner Brothers kind of clashed with Shadow of War specifically. The reason I didn't mention a game with Rockstar and Take-Two is because Take-Two own Rockstar, and there are a few examples. So, Shark Cards and GTA. Can't really say I'm against the idea. Can't really say I'm for it. All of the paywalls and everything else that you get in GTA for all of, you know, the properties and stuff like that, and everything else that you can buy, and let's face it, if you buy in-game currency in GTA, there's a lot more that you can apply it to than the likes of V-Bucks, Apex coins, or whatever else you might buy, Platinum, whether it be Warframe, you know, pretty much anything. Well, actually, I don't know about Warframe because I haven't played it, but using virtual currency as an example, there's a lot you can buy with the virtual currency you buy in GTA. There's also a lot of stuff you can buy with the virtual currency in Red Dead Redemption 2. You also earn the premium currency in Red Dead Redemption 2 as you play as well. So you don't necessarily need to buy into the microtransactions to get the gold or to have enough money to buy anything. Now, the one thing that I would say that I don't agree with GTA 5 is griefing. If you get griefed in GTA 5, someone can effectively then take that money you've paid actual money for and just make it dwindle by killing you over and over again, because hospital bills will just eat away at it constantly. At least your gold in Red Dead Redemption 2 is safe. No one can take that from you by, you know, killing you over and over again. And I would say that those systems are pretty well put in place, because no matter what the paywall, yes, it might be quite a paywall to get into something, you might need quite a bit of gold or quite a bit of cash in terms of GTA dollars, but you can still earn that in-game, and if you consistently play the game regularly, you probably will have enough to surmount any sort of paywall when the new content comes out. That's just how their sort of drip feed, as it's been described, is working. And I'm not particularly against that. The drip feed, it can work, because it prolongs the life of the game by providing new content regularly. It also gives you the opportunity to really get to grips and enjoy the game with its current content, and, well, it gives you enough time to grind up enough money to then make it to the next step, or the next big milestone, whatever that may be. And, yeah, hell, I'll almost forgot, but I'll use Rocket League as another example. Rocket League's a game that you pay for. Like, I think I paid about, what, like £15 for it? So, you know, it's not something that breaks the bank, but, you know, it's constantly being updated, it's got a big esports scene, it's constantly getting new modes, new arenas. Hell, I don't think it still does Rocket Labs, that's a mode that I do miss, but, you know, a lot of this stuff continuously requires development, and honestly, I'm not against the whole loot box system in this game, as, you know, most of the loot box systems would be for a game that's paid for. Like, Ultimate Team's where I've got probably my biggest gripe, because that is year on year, people invest thousands of pounds on various packs and stuff like that, and, you know, it has become somewhat of a big business on YouTube, just having the unboxings and unpackings for FIFA Ultimate Team and whatnot. But yeah, in this game you get the keys that you've got to buy for said loot boxes that you have, or loot crates that you get, that contain a select number of items. You can see exactly what the odds of dropping each different rarity of item are, and exactly what items are in each crate before you agree to open them. And, well, the keys are like 79 pence each. They were the last time I checked, which isn't exactly that much. It may have changed now, but, you know, it's not particularly that much. It's like 79 pence or $1 for a key. It isn't that bad. And also, it does give you, with the Rocket Pass, which is again something that you pay for, like Battle Passes in Fortnite or Apex Legends, you know, that give you plenty of in-game rewards and loot. The more that you play, the more challenges that you complete, and all this, that, and the other. The standard level of, you know, the premium pass type of game. But again, it goes into feeding the development of loads of new items, and basically pays for some of the items that are included, as well as some future development. And it can be helpful. But if you want to avoid the microtransaction system in Rocket League, you also have the player marketplace, where, you know, you can get items that are not tradable, like the decryptors that are basically free keys that you get in the free levels of their Rocket Pass. You can also trade away crates. If you get like a load of loot crates, or a load of item crates, whatever they're called in this, I'm not sure, but let's just go with loot crates. You know, you get loot crates and you can trade them off for items. If someone, say, opens 10 of a certain type of crate, they're bound to get, you know, a duplicate or two perhaps in those, and, you know, they may want something specific out of those crates that they need more crates for, but they don't really have time to grind for them. Another player can trade more crates for one of the duplicates, and therefore get something that is in the crates without having to open them themselves. But then that leads to a whole sort of in-game economy of what is worth what for trading, and all this, that, and the other. And fair enough, yes, a lot of it is unfair. Hell, you only have to look at Pokemon, where people get a shiny Geodude and then just go, you know what, I want a shiny Latios, a shiny legendary of some description in exchange for it, because I think it's worth it. And it's not. People always try and get the better deal. That's how, you know, business tends to work. People always try and get the upper hand in a deal, where if you offer someone a fair deal, you're more likely to actually get what you want. It's just a case that you don't want to, so you don't. Just a bit of a business lesson to be learned for a lot of people. But, you know, it generates that kind of economy within the game that kind of allows it to thrive in some way, because it allows the microtransaction system to even play into people's hands who don't want to purchase into it, but can still make use of it to get access to things that they do want. And that's another example of where it's been implemented well. I don't feel it's particularly invasive. Hell, I like hoarding the crates. That's just part and parcel for me. I don't really buy into microtransactions. The only microtransactions I've really bought into are, yeah, I bought some V-Bucks in Fortnite. I don't really need to buy many, because frankly I can earn them from the daily challenges in the campaign. I suppose that's one thing that the campaign is still good for over the Battle Royale. You know, you also get the Apex coins and Apex Legends. I've bought into a couple of those to get the Battle Pass. I bought the Founders Pack and the Starters Pack because of the extra stuff that you get in with that. But Hell, that's going to help fund my purchase of, you know, a good couple of battle passes for probably a good year and a half, so I'm not too fussed about that. You know, it's things like that where it can be more of a long-term investment for me that it doesn't really matter. I play Apex Legends quite a lot. Hell, I played Fortnite quite a bit, and I spent the V-Bucks on various different cosmetics for the Battle Royale mode while I played it, so I'm not overly bothered. You know, I got my use out of it. I wouldn't say that I've particularly felt ripped off by them. But, yeah. It's whether or not... It's down to the individual whether or not it's implemented well or badly. And, honestly, there are some that are just downright to the masses implemented badly, and some that are just implemented well. But to implement them transparently would be nice. Just to have a company go, yeah, so it's going to have microtransactions, this is why, this is what we hope to achieve with it. We're monetizing it because we feel that our hard work deserves it, and we're going to put this into future developments and future work. On this game, we're going to make sure that it has a good life. You know, it's a little bit different, but also kind of the same as the modding community with a lot of games. You know, the only difference is the developers put these microtransactions in to help feed because a company has to pay its staff, whereas modders just put their heart and soul and love and attention and time into making mods for a game that they love. I'm not even going to look any further or anywhere different to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Hell, that game has such a modding community, it is famous among modding communities. They've kept that game going strong 15 years, and honestly I bet you can still find new content right to this day being made for the game, even on the run-up to Bloodlines 2. But, you know, whether it be modders that just do it out of sheer love for the game, or it's, you know, a company that wants to support a game long-term because they really want it to be successful, a company needs to pay people. An individual that can do it off the good of their own back, well, yeah, fair enough, they can, but companies need to pay their staff. You can't expect someone to actually do professional grade work for free all of the time. In fact, a lot of the modders that do the best work, you'll find, have the likes of Patreons and stuff set up for them where they can get money, and hell, they're more than worthy of getting money paid to them for anyone that uses their mods and finds that they're, you know, of a professional standard, and, you know, they want to support them. It's like, for one thing, I was watching a video on YouTube of, you know, Maximilian dude, really big fighting game guy, pretty much got me into fighting games alongside a friend of mine, and, you know, consistently does good work. Used the Resident Evil 4 HD texture mod. Those guys spent years on making that mod, and it is so highly polished, so ridiculously good, that they went round and got like photo resource material to retexture things. Just such level of detail and care was put into that. And they've got a support page to, you know, take donations and stuff, and I'd say that is hands down worth it. If you have played with that mod on, it's hands down worth paying like £5-10 for, just because of the amount of work that went into it, and the amount of enjoyment and new life it breathes into the game. So if a developer was upfront and just said, this is the reason we're putting microtransactions into our game, is to get this continued support, this renewed development, and to keep breathing new life into a game that we're hoping to keep going for years and years, which is pretty much what Bethesda said they wanted to do with Fallout 76 off the bat, though I can pretty much safely say that's probably been put to bed to some extent, though they are still trying, although it is still not going well. Yeah, that's kind of just the overall transparency of microtransactions is where the big problem lies, I think, with it now. And honestly, it's down to the developers to really move away from this whole shady side of things where, you know, there's the big stigma with microtransactions, and generally down to the community to kind of take the microtransactions industry more into their own hands and put shame instead of on the reviewers, on the developers if they do something wrong, or they do something that's not particularly transparent, or, you know, they do something that's outright shady. People should make their opinions known on that. And, you know, when a developer puts in microtransactions non-invasively and does them well, like some of the games that I've mentioned here, they should receive, you know, compliments on that. Not necessarily praise, as microtransactions are never a good thing to basically have as an overarching model for the entire industry. Like, I don't think, for instance, that single-player exclusive games that are just a story-driven experience should necessarily have microtransactions in them, because they don't really benefit you in any way after you've finished the story and finished the game. You kind of pay for it, much in the same way you'd pay to buy a movie or a book. You'd go through it once, maybe you'd go through it again, a few times to get the enjoyment out of it, but at the end of the day, it is still roughly going to be the same experience. You shouldn't add in extra things. It's like you wouldn't see a person who writes books go, by the way, in this book there's included chapters 1, 7, 3 and 9. To get the extra chapters you've got to pay extra money. You wouldn't see that happen, and a book like that would not sell. Same with a movie. It's like, oh yeah, pay extra to get access to the deleted scenes, which, yes, fair enough, you might do in the director's cut, but there's a lot more to it than that. But anyway, aside from all that, that leads me on to my next point, which is, again, to do with transparency. Now, Rockstar, when they announced their GTA 5 roadmap at the beginning of GTA 5's lifespan, before the launch of GTA 5 Online even, they said that the casino was going to come to GTA, and, you were going to go in, be able to gamble, and really just enjoy yourself in a way that only San Andreas had really portrayed before it, in terms of its Las Venturas, and, it's even its betting shops. Those little horse racing betting shops that were never advertised, didn't have their own, marker or anything, you just had to kind of find them. Yeah, and that was put in, and now, even though the advertising campaign for the Casino DLC, I can't remember the name of it, honestly, I think it's Diamonds and Riches or something, I can't really remember, but since that's been put in, and it's been put in online, people are having a lot to say about it. It's a bit of a bone of contention, and again, I can see why, because, obviously you can pour money into the shark cards, like I mentioned, a microtransaction system implemented well. This kind of plays with the idea a little, because you can now pour money into a video game to potentially take advantage of an addiction that you would have had in real life, going into betting shops and whatnot, and putting that in a video game setting where you have the option to buy these shark cards and to gamble with them, potentially losing all of your money or potentially making your money into more money. However, buying money in forms of shark cards to then spend on gambling, even if you make a fortune and make a massive win out of it, you still can't take that out of the game. So I see where some people are saying that it's not necessarily a good thing, but again, you do make quite a lot of money in Grand Theft Auto if you actually play the game, and you can probably make way more than enough to gamble away with. Even if you lose a lot of your money, you can still gamble it pretty regularly, I would say. Now, the one big bone to pick with the whole gambling side of things with GTA, before I go into more of the whole anti-gambling thing and how, it could be exploiting an addiction, which, yes, it could, but, there could be various limits and things put in place to stop you from gambling over certain amounts, over certain lengths of time, that kind of thing. Let's just go straight on to the whole, the aspect of the community. And honestly, if you look up GTA 5 online videos on YouTube, you're pretty much going to find a lot of things that are how to maximize your income, but also a lot of things that are how to glitch, cheat, and basically, get into modded lobbies, get all your money, get millions, if not billions of dollars in 5 minutes flat, that kind of thing. It's been around since the dawn of time on the Xbox 360. People have found various glitches, hacks and bugs to fucking get themselves an immense amount of money, whether that be spawning infinite money bags from the armoured cars, or just spawning armoured cars over and over again thanks to a bug where if 3 players were in certain places in a lobby with 5 players, it would just spawn an armoured car over and over again, way back on the 360 and PS3, just to get loads and loads of money from that. Or, whether it was the whole weird software crack that allowed you to put a bounty of $50 million on someone, just that kind of thing. It all ruined the game, and really it a lot of people may say, oh well, they shouldn't put microtransactions in the game and expect you to pay for money, or they shouldn't have the money be so grindy. At the end of the day, if you're not playing the game to enjoy it as well as to then get the benefits of the rewards of playing the game, and you're not playing it to actually, experience the game, get the rewards, level up, do all this, that and the other of a standard RPG style gameplay loop, which, let's face it, Grand Theft Auto Online does fall into quite a bit, then why are you playing the game if you don't want to kind of play the game, if that makes sense? It's rather an odd one, isn't it? And honestly, the systems in GTA have suffered as a result of people just trying to glitch, hack, and cheat their way to as much money as possible. Like, in the original build, many of you may remember, there was not just the ability to share job cash like there is now, but also the ability to give cash to other players. And you could give... I can't even remember if there's a limit on this. I think it was like up to $10,000. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It's been a while since I've been able to do it. Believe me, it's been taken out of the game way before now. Like, I'm talking years ago. And, yeah, that system was just abused by tons of people looking to just money boost, and therefore led Rockstar to just outright say, you don't deserve to have the opportunity to do this anymore. We're taking it away from you. And they did. And honestly, anyone that does glitch, hack, and cheat, or do whatever the hell money boost to get money in GTA only ends up getting stung by it anyway, because Rockstar have systems that are in place to basically highlight anyone that could potentially be cheating, boosting, or using hacks to get any amount of money. And once they get singled out, they get all of their money taken off them, they get banned, they get their level reset, they get all of their assets taken off them. That's all their cars, buildings, businesses, everything else. Regardless of whether they've purchased shark cards or not, it'll still sting if that happens to them. And honestly, if you do cheat or use hacks to get money like that, you deserve it, because it's in the terms of service. You won't do that. So, at the end of the day, well, kind of brought it on yourself a little bit, But, yeah, it's, the community's kind of ruined it for themselves in terms of the gambling and the whole casino side of things, because I dare say the casino in its original state was just intended to be added into the online and the campaign, where, you could just go and gamble, put your money into a machine, put it in a slot machine, put it on a roulette table, put it in a blackjack, whatever the hell you may be able to do, I don't know, I haven't tried it yet. But all of that, it would have been without what it will inevitably have now. Now, a lot of you who haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2 probably won't know, and I know there's a lot of people that play GTA that don't. It has a system where you can play poker in Red Dead Redemption 2 online, and in order to do so, you have to pay an entry fee on the poker table. And that entry fee is basically there to say, right, you're already going to be money down, so if you're going to money boost, we're going to take a percentage of that, so you can't really do it fast, or you can't really do it viably, and everyone ends up losing money over the long haul, so it's not really going to be viable for everyone just to rely on this as a method of money boosting. And it makes perfect sense to do that in a community that has proven itself to be so untrustworthy when given free rein over options which enable money boosting. Sorry to say, and it hurts to say it, but the community kind of had this coming, myself included, honestly, despite the fact I've never used any glitches or anything in GTA or Red Dead Redemption 2 to get large amounts of money. It is still a system I'd rather be without, because the last thing I want to do is have someone who has done all of this stuff just to give, here, have a nice gesture, here's $10 million out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden Rockstar pick up on that and just go, right, okay, that came out of where? And then I lose all of my money, my rank progress, potentially even get banned. I'd rather not. Honestly, I'd rather not. It's just inconvenient. But that kind of system will inevitably be in place in the casino DLC for GTA 5 as well. So it's going to be something that carries over, that you're going to have to pay a premium just to play these games, so you can only really play them for entertainment. Playing them to actually gain money becomes very, very difficult. Hell, to the point of which I thought poker was kind of a redundant system in Red Dead Redemption 2, because it doesn't seem like it could be profitable and be enjoyable at the same time. Whereas it would be without that entrance fee, but then people would just abuse it to money boost. So, Catch-22, poker has been ruined to an extent for me. I wouldn't really play it unless, there was no entry fee, but I know there can't be no entry fee, otherwise people would boost. So it's kind of an activity that I really did look forward to originally, which has an ingenious way of stopping money boosting, which I do approve of, which also ruins it for me, which sucks, because I would have liked to really enjoy poker. I do enjoy playing poker, both fictionally, in games, and whenever I can for real, because it's just an enjoyable activity that is very social and allows you to really just enjoy, relax, and take a nice evening to just play some cards, and hell, it even allows you to get to know people to a good extent as well, because their poker tells can tell you a lot about their personality. But enough of that. That's kind of my whole stance on the whole thing. As far as the whole addiction to gambling side of it goes, I do agree that it could be used to kind of pass your real world addiction into a fictional world, and therefore be used to enable said addiction, but there could be limits put in place, and it is very, very circumstantial as to how it affects each individual person, because every individual is different, and therefore gets their buzz from any certain addiction in various ways. So it's very much down to the individual. And to move on to my final point, which is the loot box laws and gambling laws in Britain, there are gambling laws in this country that say if you think someone has a problem with gambling, if you work in a betting shop or bookies, wherever, that you are to then stop them from gambling. Now, because most of that is down to, basically people gauging other people and trying to work out, do they have a problem? Are they just someone that regularly bets? Do they make this a regular hobby? Just, how much are they putting on? Blah, blah, blah. There's so many factors to consider. It often goes where it probably should be someone steps in, someone probably doesn't. It's hard to deal with, especially considering if you get someone who is potentially a bit unlucky and has lost maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, maybe more in terms of money, then, well, people, when they lose a large amount of money in gambling, tend to feel sick, annoyed, and get a bit confrontational. If you've got someone who is angrily telling you you can't stop them from gambling because blah 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 blah, whatever reason it may be, it's going to become difficult, because you don't really want to get into that confrontation, you don't really want to get someone angry, because then effectively your employer can just turn around and tell you, well, you actively antagonised a customer, we're going to have to let you go, and then your job's gone. It becomes really, really annoying to deal with. And, it's a bit of a minefield. So gambling and addiction is something that is very, very, very difficult to deal with, and very difficult to sort out. In terms of whatever legislation you can pass, also seems like the legislation isn't exactly airtight and leaves plenty of room for various scenarios to sort of be a bit like loopholes. And the same goes for loot boxes being classed as not gambling in the UK. They were passed as being not gambling. And honestly, the reason that I feel this is, like I said I would get onto this, quite a while ago, but the reason that I feel this is because in this country we have what we call National Savings and Investments, which is a banking institution that is backed by the Treasury, Her Majesty's Treasury. And it offers various accounts, savings accounts, ISAs, bonds, and, stuff like that. One of the accounts that they offer are called premium bonds. Now, conversely to all other accounts that National Savings offer, to my knowledge, pretty much they act similarly to bank accounts. They all offer, various interest rates depending on how long you may have to tie your money in for, and, what type of account it is, what it's there for, and, whether there are limits on how much you can invest, like there are in ISAs and stuff like that. There's a limit to how much you can put in every year, that kind of thing. Premium bonds are a little bit different, and this is where I think they may have decided to say that loot boxes aren't gambling, because premium bonds are a bit of an odd account to have. Converse with all other sort of normally, or, is it obversely or conversely? I can't remember. I may be getting my grammar wrong here. But compared to other accounts where you get a set amount of interest on any amount that you invest, maybe based on the amount you invest, you get a percentage. Maybe you invest £1,000 to £3,000, you get maybe 1%, maybe anything between 5 and 10,000 is 2%, and anything above 10,000, maybe 2.5%. That may be going a bit overboard. Looking at my options, the most I can get on £15,000 right now is 0.9%, and that is the best I can find. It's just terrible. So premium bonds for me have been a natural go-to because I can get more money off those if I win a prize. Yes, that's how it works. If I win a prize once every 3 months, even if it is the worst prize that the entire thing offers. Now, the way that premium bonds work is you invest anywhere between £25,000 and £50,000. For each pound you have invested between that amount, you get 1 entry ticket. So you invest the bare minimum of £25, you get 25 entry tickets. You invest 50,000, you get 50,000 entry tickets. And this is generated by a system that I believe is called Ernie, as a hangover from the war, that basically picks out these numbers at random. Now, these are basically serial numbers for each individual pound of money that is invested by everyone across the entire country and everyone that has an account with premium bonds from NS&I. And every month there is a prize draw that decides which numbers win what prizes. And there are, thousands of prizes, leaning from £25 prizes all the way up to £1 million prizes. There are £2 million prizes every month that are drawn at random, and basically because this is an account that generates no interest but has a chance of winning stuff in prizes, well, then that in itself could be confirmed as a form of gambling. It's not really gambling as far as I would say it is. It's taking a chance on winning something. At the end of the day, yes, some people may call it gambling, and it may fall under the legislation somewhere there. However, the one thing with premium bonds that really stands it out among any other form of gambling, including the lottery, which it does sound quite similar to when you put it in certain terms, with premium bonds, you always get out what you've put in. So you can put in, say, £5,000, and then, once it's all cleared, you can then get it out. Even before it's had a chance to go for a prize draw, you can then withdraw it, and you've still got your £5,000 to go back into the nominated account for the premium bonds. So you can always get your money back. However, I think the reason that the UK's Parliament and government has decided on loot boxes not being gambling is because premium bonds, by some weird, odd sort of association, would also be affected by the same or similar legislation, and therefore would have to be modified. And with the hundreds of thousands of premium bond accounts, probably millions of premium bond accounts there are, with varying amounts in them from £25 to, the 50,000. Hell, there are some that even go back as far as like the 1940s, 1950s, that are like £1 or £2. So, there are some accounts that go back to the old premium bond account books way before the age of digitisation of all these things. And, it would become difficult to legislate that, because if you change any legislation on that, some people really do put a lot of money in that with hopes of winning quite a large amount of money. And they are using it as a form of savings account, some of them even for their children. You can buy premium bonds for children. So, it can be classed as sort of, a form of childhood gambling, but at the same time, it's an investment in your child's future, because if that child then gets those premium bonds gifted by a parent or grandchild, and then the premium bonds come good and end up winning them a couple of £100,000, that could set them up for the rest of their lives, and the money's never at risk, it's never going to go anywhere, you can always withdraw it. I think the parents get a hold of control of the account up until the child is deemed of a legal age to be responsible for it, which is 16, maybe 18, I don't know. I know you've got to sign over the account, so it may be down to your parents' discretion, but, well, that's just it, It's that kind of thing where you're never really risking anything, but it still is going to be tied in some form of gambling. It may just be that that's the reason why they haven't been deemed, loot boxes haven't been deemed as a form of gambling, because it would affect premium bonds in some way, and that would then cause more problems across foreign national savings. Hell, it may not be. There may be some completely other unrelated reason, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. And honestly, I think I've talked enough. is there anything that I've forgotten to cover out of the things that I wanted to? Let's see, there's Crash Team Racing's Nitro Fuels microtransactions. There was the premium bonds from National Savings being tied in with gambling. There's the review shielding from Activision by releasing a game and then releasing microtransactions later after the reviews and all that have come in. And there's the anti-gambling laws in the UK. I think I've covered everything here. Of course, I would really love to hear what the community has to say on this. I'm just one person, I have my own opinions, and I figured I'd voice them because this is kind of getting to a point now where I'm considering microtransactions to be either done well, where I know exactly why they're in a game, I know exactly what they're there for, and, you know, it's pretty commonplace as to why it's actually a thing. And then, on the other hand, there are the microtransactions that are badly put in place. They are put in place quite cloak and dagger, quite underhanded. And of course, to go back to a point, there is that patent that was trying to be put on a form of microtransaction that was, honestly, probably one of the most shady things I've ever seen. Because it basically manipulates the matchmaking process. And yeah, I'll open this. It manipulates the matchmaking process to put people who are buying these microtransactions in with people who aren't buying the microtransactions and creating a skill gap between the two on purpose. So if you buy microtransactions, you're put in a match full of people who are worse than you by quite a way, so you can dominate and destroy them and win almost every time, and just generally feel good about your purchase because, hey, I'm now winning because I've bought this stuff, it's obviously making a difference, I'm winning because of it. Maybe I'll buy more. Or alternatively, you're on the opposite end of the scale, which is you're put in a match with people who are paying for these microtransactions and you're getting constantly blown up because of it. And then the big crux of the matter for this little patent was that it will show you the weapons, the pack, whatever it may be, that has taken care of you, or that has beaten you, and then advertise it to you whilst you're in defeat. Whilst you're angry that you're being constantly spawn killed or constantly beaten because a car that just doesn't lose its speed on corners would go around, for example. It could be applied to any genre, making it drastically unfair and very much pay to win, and also capitalising on that pay to win by making it seem like people who are winning because they are paying, and essentially capitalising on people feeling way too good about themselves spending this money to win, wanting more of the same rush of winning constantly, and people who are just raging and really fucking losing their mind about something, and really just getting that kind of fed up to the point where they just go, "Ugh!" and just mash buttons on their controller to skip something, and hell, it could just lead straight to a purchase, and with one-button purchases, that could be even worse. But it's that kind of thing that I find predatory. It's that kind of thing that really just churns my stomach. And it scares me that was actually raced to have a patent put on it. Now, my memory may be failing me here, but if memory serves, it was Activision that wanted to put this patent out as well. At any rate, that's not something I'm going to get into again. I believe I've covered that before, if not here, in Let's Talk somewhere else. And I do not want to cover that again. But I am very keen to find out what the community thinks on the whole future of gaming and microtransactions, whether they find the fact that the UK has found loot boxes to be not gambling ethical or not, what they think about Microsoft, let's just not go there, they have nothing to do with this, Activision, shoehorning in microtransactions later on down the line, and whether or not they have a future if they continue to turn people off with this kind of thing. Because, albeit, it's their game, fair enough, they can do what they want with it to an extent, but telling half-truths to your customer and then changing things later on down the line is going to turn people off your product. Look at Fallout 76, for example. I can't think of a single person that still routinely plays that game. Most people I know have traded it in because of its just absolute farcical handling from its day one launch. There have been so many bugs, glitches, and just outright horrendous game-breaking issues with that game. I can't think of a single person that plays it anymore because of its issues. And that has nothing to do with the microtransactions. The fact that microtransactions are also in there and seem to be also getting worked on just as much as the bugs are what are really turning people against them. And that, with Elder Scrolls Blades, Bethesda have a lot of flack on their plate, like I said. It's not great for them. So, how is this going to change and shape the future of our gaming industry? There are various companies, such as Capcom, and I believe Namco, who said microtransactions are just not for us, we don't want to do them, we don't want any part of them. And then companies like EA, Activision, that have actively embraced microtransactions and really wanted to make that their big sort of model going forward. How do you think the future of the gaming industry is going to go? How do you feel about the UK changing up its laws or not changing up its laws on loot boxes and, other things like that? Also, I'd like to know what people would think of, putting microtransactions in their own game. Is to steal a little bit from What Culture, on my part, on their video covering this kind of thing with Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which they did. Highly recommend you go and watch them, honestly, because it's quite informative and probably does a better job than me. But, yeah, they also shoehorned in, if you had a game yourself, how would you put microtransactions in it? Honestly, I'd put it in pretty much like shark cards or like Overwatch's loot boxes. Just as long as it's transparent that kind of stuff is there to fund long-term development. And let's face it, as much as loot boxes, shark cards, gold in Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, are there and you might not be happy about them, just think about how long these games are going to last before their sequels come around. How much is going to be added to them. You would never see that on the previous generation. You would just see sequels. Like GTA 5 now, it's been going since 2013 for GTA Online? 6 years. Hell, we'd have seen a bloody sequel to GTA 5 long before now if they didn't have that kind of system in place to just give such longevity and such life to GTA 5 itself. I'd just love to get everyone's 2 cents on this matter, where they think the future of the gaming industry is going, what they think about the current, almost sort of global address towards microtransactions and loot boxes in particular, and how they feel about microtransaction systems, whether they've been implemented well, whether they've been implemented badly, and particular examples of where they think it's been implemented well and why, or particular examples of exactly the opposite, why it's been implemented badly, and how and in which games it's been implemented badly in. Now, everyone has their own opinions on games that are good and bad because of microtransactions, maybe having a hand in things that they've been turned off by, things that they didn't perhaps buy because of microtransactions. If there's anything really that, microtransactions have shaped one of your decisions, maybe, any advice that you could perhaps give on how to implement microtransactions to developers in future, how you think it should be handled that would be perhaps responded well. Hell, if people just say this is a way that microtransactions could be implemented into a game that I would support because it would benefit me with using it or without using it even, if it just allowed the game to have more life breathed into it, whether I use it or not, and other people did, without having a detrimental impact on me, then yeah, that's great. I can't really think of anyone that would negatively impact on that. Of course, microtransaction systems are very hard to balance, and in contrast, shark cards could and still can be used to buy griefing tools in GTA, for example. So, as much as they're there and they're not invasive, they can also be used by people who, don't necessarily have the time to grind up the money just to buy something like the DeLorean rocket launcher, freaking flying car of doom, that thankfully Rockstar have patched that. You can't go into passive mode in that fucking vehicle anymore. That's a damn godsend. But, to go out and just buy something like that when you're level 5 in the game and then you just go out and grief everyone else because why the hell not, lol. It's that kind of thing that it feeds the negativity and the stigma that's attached to microtransactions, which games companies are trying to shy away from, and that's just making it worse. So please feel free to give me your thoughts and comments below. I'd love to hear what people think of this, and honestly, if there's anything else that you feel I've forgotten to mention at this point, because, honestly, I'm just going to level with people right now, I've recorded this video 4 times. This is the best I've done. So, yeah, it's taken me a while to sort of articulate my thoughts without repeating myself too much, and yes, if you think I've repeated myself too much in this video, or that I've just rambled on for way too damn long, which Yes, kind of have. But feel free just to let me know about that as well, because I'm always looking for ways to improve, and frankly, in 4 takes, this is the best I've been able to do. So, any advice would be helpful. But I'm going to leave you with that for now, and just say that any other thoughts on the matter, anything that you'd like to add, anything you feel I've missed, please feel free to add it in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Hopefully with more pleasant news, because I begin to notice that my Let's Talk series has kind of gone from starting out with a positive spin, with a few Elite Dangerous things I hope to see in future, to microtransactions and the negative side of gaming, the negative connotations. I'm becoming a bit like a real news network that you see on TV that just focuses on the negative, because that's where things get viewed. That's where you get your airtime, that's where you get your viewership. And it's just not good. So I'm going to leave it there. Have yourselves a nice day, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.